hip-hop goes beyond music and is the heart and soul of social reform. Throughout this course, throughout the history of hip-hop, we have seen what a vital role it has played in bringing people together. In the Mamba video, it showed the origins of hip-hop and how it brought together Latinos and African Americans and just groups that were historically and still underrepresented and repressed, and gave them a voice and brought them together. And we've also seen how that was intended to stop violence and take gang wars and put it into a more powerful and meaningful sort of lifestyle and just, protecting the youth. And through that, hip-hop has really become like an intersection and integral part of social justice and just fighting for equality. When you have the sort of peace treaty, once again, that it brought, and that was just kind of the origins and the very start of the positivity and equality, that not equality, but more of a fight for equality in the foundation that hip-hop has given individuals. Going back to the togetherness for a minute, it has brought artists, small and large, to create music and artistry, whether that be, like I said, music or graffiti or even fashion. It has given a common medium to express the artistic abilities and in such giving a voice and a way to express themselves in a way that it was and potentially would still be inaccessible to minority groups. Looking outside of hip-hop for a moment and looking towards groups such as the Black Panther Party and just social activism at an all-time high. There is a quote by Huey Newton stating, "Black power is giving power to people who have not had power to determine their own destiny." This is really relevant because this is one of the co-founders of the Black Party Panther, and this dates back to 1966, around that time. And again, for a little bit of a history sake, the Black Panthers were known for protecting the Black community against police brutality. They were almost noted as like the Black Lives Matter movement before Black Lives Matter. But where it gets interesting is a lot of their foundations and a lot of their voice and ideology has been transformed into hip-hop, especially when you look at groups like the NWA, Kendrick Lamar, and Tupac, are all very significant individuals and groups who have brought the Black and African American community together on the ground of injustice. It really is so unique when you see just these like historically marginalized groups and how it had activism such as protesting and kind of more of like social justice in terms of like the 60s, where there's just movements, and how that's kind of transformed into music, and it's not really thought about or digested a lot. When you're consuming songs by Kendrick Lamar, there is always that deeper meaning, but it's not necessarily something that is getting talked about or dissected. Now, obviously, there are songs that are a lot more in your face, and it needs a lot less like recognition that it is protest and fighting for equality. Songs like Rockstar by DaBaby, which is a very pro-BLM song, I Can't Breathe, referencing the issues with George Floyd, and then T-Pain's Get Up, which again, this song has a lot of ideology and like similarities between Malcolm X's movement with social activist Malcolm X, and again, that's just something that I feel doesn't really get recognized in a lot of space, and like Malcolm X himself is not really talked about or discussed. So the fact that we have a large figure or notable figure like T-Pain, kind of bringing awareness and acknowledgement of Malcolm X and everything that he's done is kind of remarkable. But one song in particular, by Lil Baby, The Bigger Picture, there's a quote, "I find it crazy the police will shoot you, know you're dead, and still tell you to freeze." This is such a powerful and meaning quote because while it references one case, it also references so many issues and so many wrongful deaths and so many situations that should just have never happened. And I think that is kind of where there's power in hip-hop, because as awful and tragic as it is, these deaths and these movements don't really get acknowledged until something terrible happens. And while this is acknowledging the bad, it also creates discourse throughout everything. It is something that can always be heard and something that is always relevant without there needing to be a massive tragedy. I think that's one of the most powerful things about hip-hop is it takes these events and it allows conversation to be heard and talked about in a bigger way and in a way that seems less objectivable, or I guess sort of this denial and just controversy surrounding BLM. While there's obviously controversy surrounding hip-hop, it is less about the facts and more about the negative connotations and just issues or potential issues surrounding violence and things of those nature, which again historically has been disproven, but that is a different conversation. There is a sort of false narrative and just really harmful discourse around Black Lives Matter, and I think that truly is highlighted in hip-hop because it talks about the same information, but in a way that is not necessarily more enjoyable, but it has melody and beat and all of this. So while it is being discussed and consumed, it kind of creates less objectiveness, if that makes sense. And I think that's just something that is so specific to hip-hop and really goes back to its origins. Because hip-hop, again, when you talk about hip-hop, it's impossible to not bring up the very start and kind of where it has become now, and how it's transcended. But at the very beginning, at the core and foundation of hip-hop has been this need and want for equality and just giving a voice to misrepresented communities. And it has really allowed and hopefully shown that individuals can advocate for themselves and others, and advocating and creating conversations look differently in so many ways. To build on that, one of the biggest things hip-hop has brought is it's educating us about the importance of education and awareness in the fight for social artists. Many artists have been able to use their music to educate audience about social issues and inspire them to take action. But through their powerful lyrics, they're shedding these lights on inequality, racism, and police brutality. And again, while it is tragic and awful to say, there are groups of individuals, specifically white people, who, if they've lived privileged lives, that they may not be aware or exposed to this. And hip-hop kind of is that first shown and first highlight, and it allows listeners and people to critically examine these issues and fight for change, because it's not something that everyone deals with. It's something a large portion of people do, but it creates and allows for solidarity and community. It obviously provides community and uplifts them for Black individuals and African Americans, but it also allows kind of this opportunity for advocates and allies to step forward and try and help in the fight for equality. Hip-hop has also played a significant role in allowing and encouraging marginalized communities to get involved in the political process. It has given a voice and is aimed to give a voice to the voiceless in communities who, again, have felt misrepresented or no representation, especially in politics. But things like the Hip Hop Caucus, which is a national organization, and it uses hip hop culture and ideas to encourage and engage with young people and kind of be their first resource and introduction to the political process. It has been so incredible and amazing and just encouraged so many voters to go out and vote and make a change and advocate for social justice. And even these social changes goes beyond inequality, police brutality, and just equality. It fights for climate change and all of the big picture and just things that young voters should do care about, and encouraging them to go out and also just kind of reassuring them that their voice does matter. Because so many people, especially in marginalized communities who feel voiceless and who have been voiceless for so many years, lose hope that their voice or their vote does matter. And while this video and podcast may have sounded like a broken record, I just wanted to take one more time to highlight an individual, DJ K, and kind of his influence on hip-hop. He was one of the first to take directly to hip-hop and call out social justice through music. There is a song specifically called Street Justice, and just the impacts that it had. While it may not be the most well-known or the go-to protest song, I feel, and I've seen so many people online quote and give DJ K Slay this fiery radio star, innovator, kind of figurehead, and just someone who has played such a vital role in hip-hop, kind of how he blossomed and how he started a much bigger change in voice and really helped hip-hop go back to its original roots, and how it became a way to bring communities together and give voice to the voiceless. DJ K Slay was this crucial bridge between hip-hop generations, and he in so many ways helped carry on this backbone and all of these traits that I've talked about that carried on in hip-hop. He didn't start it, he didn't do anything like that, but he is a major reason why we have Kendrick Lamar and people who have became household names who still fight and understand the importance of creating dialect and hopefully encouraging people to get out and find their voices, and eventually, ideally, encouraging the change that is so desperately needed in the United States. Once again, just to really reiterate this idea, regardless of your thoughts and feelings about hip-hop and rap and kind of the culture that has been created from hip-hop, it is impossible to deny the apparent effects that hip-hop has had and success in bringing marginalized communities together. Hip-hop for decades has created an environment where it has become the norm to challenge and speak out against these events, and there is no reason to believe that hip-hop is going away anytime soon, or that they will lose the courage it takes to fight for social reformment. And quite frankly, I hope it doesn't in hip-hop. There should be so much more research and data onto the correlation between hip-hop and social reform, because it is a pillar of it, and you truly cannot have one without the other. They have almost intertwined to a point where it's almost indisguisable to see where hip-hop ends and social reform starts, and vice versa. But again, I think it's just so amazing to see everything hip-hop has done. And while I focused on the lyricism and musical side of hip-hop, it has taken place everywhere. You see it in graffiti, or even in dancing, and just anything artistical. You see this fight and this drive, and that is just the most breathtaking and awe-inspiring thing, is how hip-hop has continued to, over the years, progress and reinvent itself while still staying true to the identity of bringing together individuals. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned a little bit more about the close relationship between social reform, Black lives, the fight for racial equality, whatever you want to call it, and hip-hop.